held about one-third of the Soviet nuclear arsenal. Until Ukraine returned the Russian nuclear weapons stationed on its soil, it had the world's third-largest nuclear weapons stockpile, of which Ukraine had physical but no operational control. Russia controlled the codes needed to operate the nuclear weapons through electronic permissive action links and the Russian command and control system. Although this could not be sufficient guarantee against Ukrainian access. Formally, these weapons were controlled by the Commonwealth of Independent States. Belarus only had mobile missile launchers. And Kazakhstan had chosen to quickly return the nuclear warheads and missiles to Russia. Ukraine went through a period of internal debate on their approach. On the 23rd of May 1992, Russia, the US, Belarus, Kazakhstan and Ukraine signed the Lisbon Protocol to the START-I Treaty, ahead of ratifying the treaty later. The protocol committed Belarus, Kazakhstan and Ukraine to adhere to the NPT as non-nuclear weapons states as soon as possible. However, the terms for the transfer of the nuclear warheads were not agreed. And some Ukrainian officials and parliamentarians started to discuss the possibility of retaining some of the modern Ukrainian-built RT-23, SS-24 missiles and Soviet-built warheads. 1993. 2 regiments of UR-100N, SS-19 missiles in Ukraine were withdrawn to storage because warhead components were past their operational life. And Ukraine's political leadership realized that Ukraine could not become a credible nuclear military force as they could not maintain the warheads and ensure long-term nuclear safety. Later in 1993, the Ukrainian and Russian governments signed a series of bilateral agreements giving up Ukrainian claims to the nuclear weapons and the Black Sea Fleet. In return in gas and oil debt cancellation and future supplies of fuel for its nuclear power reactors. Ukraine agreed to ratify the START-I and NPT treaties promptly. This caused severe public criticism leading to the resignation of Ukrainian Defense Minister Morozov, too, on the 18th of November 1993. The Rada passed a motion agreeing to START-I but renouncing the Lisbon Protocol, suggesting Ukraine would only decommission 36% of missile launchers and 42% of the warheads on its territory, and demanded financial compensation for the tactical nuclear weapons removed in 1992. This caused U.S. diplomatic consternation. And the following day Ukrainian President Kravchuk said, "We must get rid of these nuclear weapons. This is my viewpoint from which I have not and will not deviate." He then brought a new proposal to the Rada. On the 15th of December 1993, U.S. Vice President Al Gore visited Moscow for a meeting. Following side discussions, a U.S. and Russian delegation, including U.S. Deputy Secretary of Defense William J. Perry, flew to Ukraine to agree to the outlines of a trilateral agreement including U.S. assistance in dismantling the nuclear systems in Ukraine and compensation for the uranium in nuclear warheads. Participants were invited to Washington on the 3rd to the 4th of January to finalize the agreement. A trilateral statement with a detailed annex was agreed, based on the previously agreed terms but with detailed financial arrangements and a firm commitment to an early start to the transfer of at least 200 warheads to Russia and the production in Russia of nuclear reactor fuel for Ukraine. Warheads would be removed from all RT-23s, SS-24, within 10 months. However, Ukraine did not want a commitment to transfer all warheads by the 1st of June 1996 to be made public for domestic political reasons. And Russia did not want the financial compensation for uranium made public, concerned that Belarus and Kazakhstan would also demand this. It was decided to exclude these two matters from the published agreement, but cover them in private letters between the country's presidents. Another key point was that U.S. State Department lawyers made a distinction between guarantee and assurance, referring to the security guarantees that were desired by Ukraine in exchange for non-proliferation. In the end, a statement was read into the negotiation record that according to the U.S. lawyers, lesser sense of the English word assurance would be the sole implied translation for all appearances of both terms in all three language versions of the statement. President Clinton made a courtesy stop at Kyiv on his way to Moscow for the trilateral statement signing, only to discover Ukraine was having second thoughts about signing. Clinton told Kravchuk not signing would risk major damage to U.S.-Ukraine relations. After some minor rewording, the trilateral statement was signed by the three presidents in Moscow in front of the media on the 14th of January 1994. After this was agreed, the U.S. used its Nunn-Lugar Cooperative Threat Reduction Program to provide financial assistance over $300 million, equivalent to $548 million in 2021. And technical assistance in decommissioning the nuclear weapons and delivery systems, which took to 2008 to fully complete. The U.S. also doubled other economic aid to Ukraine to $310 million, equivalent to $567 million in 2021, for 1994. In 2009, Russia and the United States released a joint statement that the memorandum's security assurances would still be respected after the expiration of the START Treaty. After the annexation of Crimea by Russia in 2014, Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, the UK, and US stated that Russian involvement was a breach of its Budapest Memorandum obligations to Ukraine, which had been transmitted to the United Nations under the signature of Sergei Lavrov and others, 20, and in violation of Ukrainian sovereignty and territorial integrity. On the 4th of March 2014, the Russian President Vladimir Putin replied to a question on the violation of the Budapest Memorandum, describing the current Ukrainian situation as a revolution. A new state arises, but with this state and in respect to this state, we have not signed any obligatory documents. 21. Russia stated that it had never been under obligation to force any part of Ukraine's civilian population to stay in Ukraine against its will. Russia suggested that the US was in violation of the Budapest Memorandum and described the Euromaidan as a US-instigated coup.